We all know heroes in our world, but some of the most impactful and important heroes aren't realized and are forgotten. The Harlem Hellfighters were an African American unit fighting in World War I. They are true heroes, but not everybody knows that. The 369th Infantry, also known as the Harlem Hellfighters, were established and fought in World War I. They fought hard for their country, but they also fought for African Americans. The Harlem Hellfighters were an important and impactful group in history. They faced many conflicts with racism while fighting through World War I, but they fought through that with their heroism and bravery. They brought jazz music to France and paved the way for more African Americans to obtain rights, prove themselves as soldiers, and be free. African Americans have not been treated fairly in the past, not only in normal life but also in the military. They were segregated, forced to do hard labor, and some even were not allowed weapons. Chad L. Williams explains in his book, Torchbearers of Democracy, African American Soldiers in the World War I Era, war planners deemed racial segregation, just as in civilian life, the most logical and efficient way of managing the presence of African Americans in the Army. In regular life, there was a lot of segregation and racism. Later, racist groups like the Ku Klux Klan were formed and the Jim Crow laws were created. World War I was not caused by one specific event, but rather structural balance in and between nations. There are four main causes that started World War I: militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. However, the spark that lit the fire was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria in Sarajevo by a member of the Black Hand Gang, Gabriel Princip, on June 28, 1914. On April 2, 1917, President Woodrow Wilson went before Congress requesting a declaration of war on Germany. His reason was that Germany was trying to get Mexico to form an alliance against the U.S., and Germany was breaking their agreement to suspend unrestricted submarine warfare in the North Atlantic and Mediterranean. The United States officially declared war on German ally Austria-Hungary on December 7, 1917. During the time of World War I, Holland was made most of African Americans. However, there was a lot of people and cultures, and they were welcome. But the people weren't happy with how things were. They just wanted to be treated as everyone else. On July 28, 1917, people had a silent march to protest the awful treatment of African Americans. It took a while for the 369th Infantry to be created. Military law stated that young black men couldn't join the New York National Guard. Even veterans from the Spanish-American War weren't allowed to join. Legislation had to be changed. In 1898, black civic leaders created a bill to amend the law. This bill had support from military and civilian organizations and Major Charles Young, the highest-ranking African American in the military. It was passed in June 1913. Governor William Sulzer was the one who signed it. It was decided that an infantry division was to be made. 3 years passed, but nothing was done. It wasn't until June 1916 when William Hayward was appointed to raise the regiment. He started to recruit young soldiers. He recruited from the San Juan Hill, the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn, and of course, Harlem. Unlike other white officers, Hayward respected his troops and did not discriminate. The 369th arrived in Brest, France in December 1918. They joined with the French 93rd Division the next month and trained under the French because the American units did not want to fight alongside African Americans. The 369th Division became part of the French 161st Division and started combat operations that summer. The 369th Division was the first African American unit to fight on French soil. The unit fought with the French in Chateau Thierry and Belleau Wood. They also participated in Champagne-Marne, Meuse-Argonne, Champagne 1918, Alsace 1918, and Lorraine 1918. Fighting was not easy. Major Warner Ross said, "Stones, dirt, shrapnel, limbs, and whole trees filled the air. The noise and concussion alone were enough to kill you. Flashes of fire, the metallic crack of high explosives, the awful explosions that dug holes 15 and 20 feet in diameter, the utter and complete pandemonium and the stench of hell, your friends blown to bits, the priests dropping near you. War is not something to be made light of." Even though faced with conflict, these men of bronze did not give up fighting. Perhaps one of the most famous stories of the 369th Infantry is of Henry Johnson and Needham Roberts.
Out there, when these Germans attacked the post. Now, approximately 24 Germans attacked. Needham Roberts got slugged almost immediately, and Johnson fought them off. He shot and he cut and he swung his rifle around and he defeated the 24 Germans. Those that didn't wound or kill, cut out. He had 21 wounds in his body, but he refused to die.
In his communique of May 20th, 1918, General Pershing remarked on Johnson and Needham's bravery by saying, "Reports in hand show a notable instance of bravery and devotion shown by two soldiers of an American colored regiment operating in a French sector. They should be given credit for preventing, by their bravery, the capture of any of our men. These men showed true bravery and were the first Americans to be awarded the Croix de Guerre, the highest medal in the French military. The Harlem Hellfighters did not lose any land to the Germans. Instead, they took land from the Germans. Melville Miller remembers walking through territory formerly owned by the Germans."
It was shining and we were marching and the band was playing. Everybody's head high. And we were all proud to be Americans, proud to be black, and proud to be the 15th New York Infantry.
This division showed true courage and heroism in their fighting. Colonel William Hayward said, "Turn back? I should say not. My men never retire. They go forward or they die." James Reese Europe was a member of the Harlem Hellfighters. He was already a famous musician and composer. He started the 369th Infantry Jazz Band. Even though they were in dark times, the Harlem Hellfighters found light. They played a lot and brought jazz music to France. The Harlem Hellfighters were good at what they did, music and fighting. They were in the trenches for 191 days, longer than any other unit. It was the Germans that gave them the name Hellfighters for their viciousness and courage while fighting. The 369th also did many things for the first time in American history. They were the first African American unit to fight on French soil and the first unit to cross the Rhine River into Germany. They were the first and only unit to receive the Croix de Guerre for taking Sochaux and for their fighting in other battles. 171 members also received individual medals. The Harlem Hellfighters had a great impact on the people and society in their time. The Harlem Hellfighters made very good friends with the Frenchmen they fought with. Many made lifelong friendships. George Cuffey, a member of the Harlem Hellfighters, became very good friends with the Frenchman Ruby Garnett. One day, Garnett took Cuffey's place on watch and was killed in an unexpected attack. If Garnett hadn't taken his watch, Cuffey felt that he would have died instead of Garnett. Cuffey later named his daughter Ruby Garnett after his friend. The Harlem Hellfighters were honored and welcomed when they returned home. They were thrown a welcome parade to celebrate their accomplishments. Even though he was sitting in a car for the wounded, Henry Johnson was so moved he stood up, waving the bouquet of flowers he was given. The Harlem Hellfighters were used to recruit more African Americans and to sell war bonds. Slogans like, "Henry Johnson licked 24 Germans," "How many stamps have you licked?" were used. For a while, these men weren't judged as blacks, they were honored as war heroes, but unfortunately, this did not last. While the infantry was given a parade, they were not allowed to be in the parade for the New York National Guard, also known as the Rainbow Division. The reason William Hayward was given was that black is not a color in the rainbow. There was still a lot of segregation. During the summer of 1919, there were so many riots that it was named the Red Summer. Things were still very bad, and even though they did so much, some of the Harlem Hellfighters died forgotten men. The Harlem Hellfighters are still impacting us today. The 369th Regiment, descended from the original from World War I, still survives today. Because of them, France was introduced to jazz music and still has it today. There are concerts in France and the United States that honor them. The Harlem Hellfighters played a part in helping African Americans get rights. While there was still racism, eventually that got better. The 369th Division had such a great impact that legislation was changed for members to receive the Medal of Honor. Senator Charles Schumer used letters written from General Pershing about Henry Johnson to change legislation, letting Henry Johnson receive the Medal of Honor on June 2, 2015. There are statues and memorials for the Harlem Hellfighters, including one in the Champagne district of France. We honor them for their heroic fighting. They are true heroes, and because of their example, 47.7% of the military are African Americans, and even more minority groups are also in the military. The Harlem Hellfighters fought hard through racism and made a path for all African Americans. They showed us that no matter the color of your skin, everyone can be a hero.